Move to our next agenda item, which is public comment. This is the opportunity for the public to address the board on any topic not on our hearing agenda this evening. We have a bunch of people signed up to testify. I would ask two things, actually three things. I will remind, please remember that we are attempting to show decorum within this, and again, from my own standpoint, there was a conversation that I witnessed that I misinterpreted. I have been assured by folks who witnessed the conversation that there was no backroom collusion to change agenda before the meeting. So for that, I apologize to my fellow commissioners for making that assertion. And so for all of you, as you come forward, please show the courtesy that we ask of each other when you're doing it, and to each other out there. And then second and third, if I read your name, and you can stick around and you have, you know, like maybe you're younger and so staying up later is okay for you. If you wouldn't mind just deferring, you know, if you want to defer it so somebody else that maybe, you know, they have a bus to catch or they have work tomorrow morning or something, if you wouldn't mind deferring, I know that people would appreciate it. I won't forget you, I will come back around. So it's just a thought, it's just something I'm throwing out there for you folks. The third thing I say is we still have the 3-minute limit. I'm going to try to enforce that pretty strictly, and less than 3 minutes is just fine too. So all of that being said, we now move forward with public comment. We have a lot of people signed up to testify. First one was already there. Second, we have signed up to testify. Edward.
I think probably all the commissioners recognize what the handout is. It's a copy of the 10 Commandments. And you know, here recently the demeanor in the commission meetings have not been of what I consider being very Christian-like with what's been going on, regardless of what people say, the backdoor conversations, that stuff been reported in the public newspaper, and all the rest of it. And I am appalled the fact that you let go a veteran of the military that went through the academy, that was qualified to be the director of the environmental services, and hire somebody that is not qualified to be the director of environmental services for our county. And I would say to you, and I don't know for sure, but I think the cook at Houston and Larry's would probably be more qualified to be the director of environmental Senator Benton is. And I know he's personal friends of Tom's, and that they're trying to make a job for the guy, but he's been in the legislature for a long period of time. David, like I say, I'm concerned and appalled at the fact again. I'm going to read the sign, past, promising future. I think you can take that promising future off of there after listening to the comments here today. And if Senator Benton's record is any indication of the legislator on environmental issues, you might be able to change that to Bangladesh up there in about 6 months to a year. So I'm just concerned as to what's going on. I'm concerned that the commissioners are taking action without the full commission being there together. And it is not right what's going on in this commission. It's never been that way before. And I've always been proud as a 80-year-old, a 71-year member of this community. And I told David that in a 3-hour meeting at his shop, that I was hoping that things would be better, but maybe my hope is fading out the window. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for my time.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Appreciate it. All right, Bob Carroll, Dave Ritchie, Deborah Gottlieb, Rosalie Gottlieb, Lehman Holder. Sir.
It's always a hard act to follow, you know. Okay. I'm learning though. Bob Carroll, I'm a resident of Clark County. I've served in public service. I worked for the Portland Public Schools for 5 years. I was hired through a hiring process. I believe that the county commissioners are here to serve the public and to go through the process. I don't know if Don Benton is qualified for the job. Honestly, it doesn't appear that he is, but maybe he is. The process should have been followed. I don't believe you guys, you two, are serving the people. And you disrespected the county, you disrespected a lot of citizens here, you disrespected your chair, I think. That's my personal opinion. The process should have been followed. now you're seeing the backlash. There's a lot of people sitting behind me that are not happy with what happened. There's some that are happy, you know, I'm sure. I think there's a lot of people out in the public that aren't here tonight that are not happy about it either. I'm sorry to see this happen. I'm sorry to see the partisanship. I'm sorry to see the ramrodding that's going on here. And all of you guys need to work together for the good of the public. I don't see that as happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Dave Ritchie, Deborah Gottlieb, Rosalie Gottlieb, Lehman Holder, Carolyn Crane. Sir?
Good evening again, Commissioners. Dave Ritchie, citizen this time. I'm not real happy on the issues of how the hiring of Don Benton in that environmental position. I don't know how that works. To me, I know there's a buddy system going on, in my opinion, between Tom Milkey and David Medore. I can tell you right now from things I'm hearing. Meetings that they've had that we've went to at a certain restaurant in Hazeldale that I believe that they had on the side, whatever. Something needs to change with the county. I mean, I've been a resident of Clark County for quite a few years, and I believe the county's upside down now. I'd like to commend Bill Barron on his work with the county, and in my opinion, I believe that's probably why he's leaving, because of what's going on with the county commissioners to this day. So, and that's my personal opinion, so that's what I believe. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Deborah Gottlieb, Rosalie Gottlieb, Lehman Holder, Carolyn Crane, Patrick Migas. And for anybody who might be watching down in the Dragonfly Cafe, we have a few seats available here, and if you can start making your way up, that would be great. They're hoping to close that. So, but if you can't, no big deal. We'll find space for you. Yeah?
Hi. Thank you for letting me speak, Commissioners. I would like to say that I want you to remember the word integrity. And then I would like you to turn around and read those words, because I don't think the two of you have read them. You're out for your own agenda, sir, and the agenda is Clark County, not Mr. Midori and not Mr. Melky. I had you speak. I was not impressed at the organization that I had you speak at by what you said. You were very nice and shook everybody's hand, but I wasn't impressed. First of all, when they took my house, Vancouver decided that they needed to take me out of the county, and they took my house, you know, and put it into Vancouver. Vancouver needed money. I am assuming that's the reason. I would say that is a legal law. It's written. So there, I believe that book back there is the laws and regulations of the commission. Steve had some earlier and was trying to get the two of you to follow that. You were on your own agenda, sir, and they, you know, you didn't listen. You've got to listen to all three of you, not just Mr. Midori. Sorry, I lost my place. Have you read, Mr. Midori, the laws of your position and your job description?
Please continue.
Okay. I can't ask questions?
You can ask questions. This is your opportunity to comment, not ours.
So I want to know if you've read them, and if you haven't, how can you learn on the job if you're not going to listen to the one that's a senior commissioner?
Call me old.
So there's laws that we all must follow, and you can't just come up there when one of the commissioners is missing and say, the two of you are going to make rules and laws of your own. Takes three. That's why we put Steve in his position and the people that decided with your money to put you there.
Please summarize.
Okay, I'm hurrying. I bring you back to the word integrity. I would hope that you'd take that book and read it and find out what the laws are and what your job entails. And I hope you find some integrity for Clark County and not Midori and Melky.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have no intention to speak, it's just a different...
That was my mistake.
Okay, no, thank you for being here.
I'll talk now.
You're signed in, so if you...
Would you like to get up and talk?
You're signed in now, so please, feel free. Then Lehman Holder, Carolyn Crane, Patrick Migas, Michelle Waller. Ma'am?
Well, this was a little different. As I say, I was not expecting to talk. But it did work well for me because I learn about people when I watch them. Now you, I know, you spoke at one of our things about knowing who's going to run for office, if you remember.
Her mic is not on.
Yeah, the mic's on, but you have to speak a little closer to it, Ms. Gottlieb. Sorry.
Oh,
You can kind of move to it.
No.
That's okay.
Yeah, you're all right.
That's already okay.
Thank you for the help.
Back goes the other way. Back goes that way now.
Thank you for the help, sir. Just to get you closer to the microphone.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, ma'am.
So anyway, so I met you. I've known you for a long time. You I have never met, and I could see having an argument and an argument and an argument and having a great time arguing. Some people affect others that way. Anyway, I'm glad that I had the opportunity to come down. I just haven't been around for a while to get here. So that's all. I'm a very sincere and interesting or whatever person. So that's all. I talk to you when I have something to say, really.
Thank you, Mrs. Dowling. Appreciate it. All right. Lehman Holder, Carolyn Crane, Patrick Migas, Michelle Waller, Jack Davis. Mr. Holder, the floor is yours.
My name is Lehman Holder. I live in Vancouver. I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of more than 1,300 members of the Lou Witt Group Sierra Club, which I serve as chair. My remarks are focused on your recent decision to employ State Senator Don Benton as Clark County's Director of Environmental Services. The Sierra Club sees several problems with this decision. To start, Senator Benton is no friend of our environment. While he has pledged to protect our natural resources, his track record as a state senator speaks otherwise. According to the League of Conservation Voters, Senator Benton has voted for the environment only 30% of the time during his tenure in the state legislature. Additionally, he has received campaign contributions from some of the likely very same people and companies who may be seeking permits from the county for various projects. This appears to Sierra Club to be a very clear conflict of interest. Will Senator Benton apply a balanced approach to protect the environment in this kind of circumstance? We think not. An example, after Senator Benton was elected to the legislature, he attempted to use the budgetary process to drastically slash funding for the Columbia River Gorge Commission. I don't know what Senator Benton has against protecting the gorge, one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen, but if his plan had succeeded, it would have crippled Washington's part of the commission and likely the Gorge Act itself. Everyone would have been the losers. Fortunately, it failed. Will Senator Benton attempt to run roughshod when dealing with Clark County's environmental regulations and policies? If past history is any indication, he will. And Commissioners Medor and Mielke, Sierra Club has no confidence that you will rein him in if needed, given your own partisan views. To be frank, Don Benton is like a bull in a china closet when it comes to the environment and our quality of life. We also foresee problems with the way Don Benton relates to others. It's well known that if you don't agree with him on a decision or an issue, he can be very abrasive and unpleasant. I myself have had past encounters with Senator Benton, and I can tell you from personal experience that this is true. Finding common ground with Don Benton on just about anything is basically an exercise in futility. It's his way or the highway. If county staff, under his supervision, or your constituents disagree with something he does or plans to do, good luck. Finally, your hiring process is flawed and did not establish protocol. My understanding is that the job was not posted and no one else, regardless of how well qualified they may be, was given the chance to apply or was interviewed. This is wrong. From 2 to 4 months every year, often longer, Benton won't even be working at the county. You may not see this as a problem, but a considerable number of Clark County residents do. Also, what are the implications of a state senator working for county commissioners? Will you attempt to influence what he does in the legislature? In our view, this would be another conflict of interest. We ask you to revisit your decision, rescind Benton's employment, and open this job to other applicants. Will in all likelihood be much less polarizing and partisan than Don Benton. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Appreciate it. All right. Next to speak is Carolyn Crane, then Patrick Migas, Michelle Wallert, Jack Davis, Daniel M. Ogden Jr. Next, please.
Thank you. First of all, before I really truly start, I'd like to say that I have been attending county commissioners meetings for years, and this is the most unpleasant one I've ever been at. In days of old, I realized that freedom of speech might have been encroached upon, but we were asked from modicum of, decency and respect. And we were told not to applaud, we were told not to shout, we were told not to hooray, and we were told not to boo. Understanding that it slows down the entire speech when all the people do that, and that I'm covering my ears because it's starting to hurt, I would appreciate it if we could consider maybe going back to those rules. Last year I ran for office against Jim Moeller. The interesting thing here is that the first thing I heard was about myself was not how much I care about my community or how often I come down to meetings, how much I care about my neighbors, but rather that I was anti-labor. Because, well, I just had to be because I was running against him, I guess. No background check, no interview, just an assumption. This was assumed in spite of the fact that at one point in my life it belonged to a union. That blew my mind. The next thing I heard was from Jim himself when he blasted over the internet that I would destroy everything in the environment. No basis for fact on this either. It completely disregarded my statements regarding the overuse of plastics that are potential destructive, non-decomposing byproduct of petroleum issues and how that impacts our planet. And I've been saying that since before bottled water. I say this because I want you to understand that you do not have to be a progressive liberal to find a proper balance to economic development and environmental protections. Senator Benton has been elected by the people so many times because people get it that he is well-grounded, clear-thinking, balanced representative of both the people and the environment.
Please show respect.
I personally have applied for long-range planning committee positions in our county. These are not even paid-for positions, but rather volunteer ones, and my application has been filtered out by human resources before you even get to pick through them. Since I know what the regulations are for the Department of Ecology and those from the Department of Natural Resources, I find that rather appalling. Based on those regulations, we really cannot build our new bridge design since it would cast a shadow on the water, and that would change the ecosystem, and according to our state regulations, that would not be okay. Since it comes within 150 yards of a river, stream, or bank, it would not be okay. Now, I grant you, no net loss is our regulation. I obviously believe eventually we will build a bridge, in spite of our state rules. Point being that we should be picking those who've been involved, who've been sent forward for selection, not eliminated before the conversation even starts. I thank you for taking a proactive position to follow through with your commitments to our people in our county. I want to thank you for hiring Don Benton. It is finally time that we get to have another discussion, and that does.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Next up is Patrick Migas, Michelle Waller, Jack Davis, Daniel Ogden, Will Lacey. Mr. Migas, the floor is yours.
In any level of government, respect for due process, the best interest of all parties, and a balance of interests being economic, social, and environmental are mandates for good reason. The two issues that I address here are the lack of credentials regarding the hire of Don Benton for the position of Director of Environmental Services and the obvious inability of the Commissioners Medora and Milky to be cognizant of this and of their willful disregard for the integrity of the position and the growth and sustainability of Clark County. I believe it goes without saying that Commissioners David Moore and Tom Milky have done a disservice to the people of Clark County, our environment, and even the Republican Party by openly committing what can be called neglect of duty, indifference to fair hiring practices, the common good, and probably the most blatant, heinous act of political cronyism I can recall in our community. It is beyond the pale of logic and reason to even consider someone so patently unqualified for this position that in hiring Don Benton as Clark County's Director of Environmental Services, we must scrutinize closely the lucidity of both of you. Do you, in fact, have capacity, defined as the ability to fully comprehend the situation and potential consequences of your actions? If so, then ethical misconduct should be grounds for recall election. The interim director and legal largent will continue in the position until such time as a group of non-farcical candidates qualified by the standards of the job description are interviewed, vetted, and hired, made. I would recommend that a mediator be appointed to the hiring process to avoid considering candidates who do not meet the minimal requirements of the job description that Milky and Medora have chosen to ignore after they were unable to find an accomplice to help rescind the qualifications of the position. They are not to be trusted to do the right thing or to strike a balance when the opportunity presents itself, and you had this opportunity. As for Don Benton, he offends my sense of integrity in office and once lied to my face when I tried to address the issue of how many salmon were being killed by dams in the Columbia River and Snake River watersheds of Washington State. And I quote, "Dams don't kill salmon." This was followed by open chuckles as he turned his back on me and walked away. He is either a liar or ignorant on the issue. Either way, Don Benton is a poor choice for the environment, and the position of Director of Environmental Services in Clark County, the integrity of our local government is absent while he is present in a job so ill-suited to his ability. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the enthusiasm, appreciate you sticking around, but it is right to say that the longer we clap, the longer we're here as far as that. So just being aware of it, I'm going to be respectful of you, just be aware of it. All right, Michelle Waller, Jack Davis, Daniel Ogden, Will Lacey, Liz Campbell. Ma'am.
Good evening, Commissioners. Michelle Waller, Vancouver. Mr. Medora and Mr. Milky, I know that you are both well acquainted with parables, so I would like to share a modern one with you tonight. It's a true story. Larry Kowarczyk is the former mayor of Langley, Washington. He was also the planning director for Coopville. 3 months ago, just in February, Mr. Kowarczyk spent 15 days in jail. He was forced to resign. Why was this? He apparently altered the environmental requirements of a building permit so his stepdaughter could construct her home on protected wetlands. He did this unilaterally, and he did this behind closed doors. This conflict of interest nepotism violated Washington law and the public trust. Mr. Kowarczyk paid dearly for his malfeasance. So, how was Mr. Kowarczyk exposed? It was one man. One brave individual, someone very similar to Kevin Gray. That's all it took, one. Gifting jobs and favors to your friends and family is poor public policy, no matter how it is gussied up and rationalized. Mr. Medor and Mr. Milky, you both have now become the primary clients Don Benton serves. Not the taxpayers, not the voters, not anyone else in this room, and certainly not our precious and vulnerable environment. We have ethical guidelines to prevent risks like this, and you ignored them. You ignored the integrity of Clark County's hiring process, and you ignored your excellent administrator, Bill Barron, when he warned you that gifting your friend this job would likely decimate this organization. I am heartened tonight by one fact. Hundreds of citizens, many of them here, are watching the Clark County Commission and your newest employee, Don Benton, with renewed vigilance. Remember the parable of Larry Kowarczyk. All it takes is one alert citizen to expose corruption. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Jack Davis. Jack's still here.
That might be me. Maybe my handwriting is not good.
No, it's Jack Davis. I promise it's Jack Davis.
T-R-I-C-E, are you sure?
Yeah, positive. Yeah, Jack Davis is, he's one of our regular attendees, so.
4.5 hours.
No, I'm sure you have, and I'm sure I will call your name soon, I promise,
It
but.
was about that time when I wrote it down.
Got it. I will, so we have Jack Davis signed up, then Dan Ogden, Will Lacey, Liz Campbell, Dan Corsi. Those are the next ones I have signed up. I don't see Jack. I'm going to put a little circle around there and come back around at the end. Dan Ogden. Are the Ogdens still here? No. All right. So I'm going to cross through that one. Will Lacey. Will Lacey. Third call, Will Lacey. Liz Campbell. All right. So we have Liz Campbell, Dan Corsi, David. Vergese. I'm sorry. It's not McDonald. It's, I'll get around to it. David something. Steve Foster are the next ones we have. Liz Campbell, please.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I'd like to say to Commissioner Medor and Commissioner Milky, mission accomplished. 2/3 of the people that were here have left.
I'd like to address these comments especially to the two of you. Commissioners, you need to post the opening for Director of Clark County Environmental Services, rescind your hiring of Senator Don Benton for this position, and apologize to the Senator for hiring him in error. Senator Benton can then submit a resume and be considered for this position along with other qualified individuals. I spent some time today looking at your code of conduct for a Clark County Commissioner. According to that code posted on your website, merit principles should guide human resource management decisions. A commissioner should support equal employment opportunity. That's quoted from your website. Neither merit nor equal opportunity played a role in the hiring of Don Benton as the Director of Environmental Services. No other persons with experience, education, and appropriate qualifications were even permitted to apply for this opening. Your action in the hiring of Benton was unjust and unethical. Clearly, you gave no thought to, and I quote, avoiding the appearance of impropriety, another principle listed in your code of conduct. Commissioners Medor and Milky, the ethical code adopted by the Board of Clark County Commissioners in March of 2001 requires that you act, I quote, in ways consistent with the highest standards of ethical conduct. You have failed to do so, and you have lost the respect of the people of Clark County. Saying a prayer before a meeting does not sanctify the actions that you take at the meeting. Rather, it should make you consider the ethics and morality of what you're doing. You need to behave in a manner consistent with the procedures and the precedents established by the Board of Clark County Commissioners. Until you do, you bring disgrace and ridicule to the citizens of Clark County.
Thank you, ma'am. We have written comments. We'll make sure those get into the record as well. Dan Corsi, David, and I'll try to spell it to see if that, David, maybe an F-O-R-G-E something? Is that you, Mr. Rogers? It is you. Okay. All right, Dan Corsi, David Rogers, Steve Foster, Craig Dewey. Those are the ones we have. Dan Corsi. Dan Corsi? Third call, Dan Corsi. Is he in the back? All right, I'm not seeing him. We'll wrap back around if anybody knows Mr. Corsi. David Rogers, then Steve Foster, Craig Dewey, Sunrise O'Mahony, and Kevin Rovner. Mr. Rogers, good evening.
Hello. I was confused about that waiving transportation.
Can you get a little closer to the mic, Mr. Rogers? Thank you, sir.
I was confused about that waiving the transportation fees. Does that mean that you would waive the fees for the store-all trucks and the trucks that are on the road when one double truck is the equivalent to 3,000 automobiles? Why would we? That's ASHTO rules. Nothing I made up, Milky.
Keep going.
All right.
All right.
In 2002, we were told by Richard Forrester, a very thorough hearing examiner, that there was not going to be a Yakult Mountain quarry. This was based on lack of water and a road system that was less than adequate. 2 months prior to the hearings that we had, Clark County people were at work planning behind closed doors on passing the cost of close to $1,300,000 to the taxpayers. 2 out of 3 commissioners overturned the hearings examiner's findings. The commissioner says if rock was needed, the risk was worth it. The risk to wells and families wasn't that important to him. Now 60% of the rock that comes out of that quarry is exported to Portland. We get no sales tax on it, nothing. And if you waive the transportation fees, the 2.5 cents a ton that he's supposed to have to pay will be gone, and we're going to be paying for that road within 10 years to be completely resurfaced again at taxpayers' expense. Now again, we have commissioners that are willing to risk our county assets and our properties. They are too busy and too important to even return phone calls. We knew Milky was that way, but Mr. Medor, your promises to help with codes and safety issues and protect the taxpayers, you've not kept that. I spoke to you in a 10-minute period, and I passed on paperwork to you, and I've called and tried to talk to you, and you don't even return your own phone calls. You don't have an excuse. Companies are more important than taxpayers and the families. It is time for the taxpayers to recall the risk takers and get willing representatives to help. Their choice to appoint and not follow hiring guidelines shows how important they think they are. I feel it was an attempt to get someone that would say yes to what they proposed and not what is environmentally important. I've said many times in this meetings, we need to clean up our county employees. The code enforcement department is controlled by the commissioners who do favors. We, the taxpayers, deserve more than the rich get richer.
Thank you, sir. All right. Steve Foster is coming forward. So Steve Foster, Craig Dewey, Sunrise O'Mahony, Kevin Rogner, or Rognev, and Isla Stanek. Mr. Foster?
Thank you. I'm a retired HR guy. In fact, most of my career was spent not only in local government, but county government. In fact, 10 years of it was spent right here as the HR director in Clark County. In fact, if memory serves, I wrote the policy on when a position can be filled without a competitive selection process. HR people get to see lots of creative maneuvers to get a certain person placed in a certain job, or removed from a certain job, or paid a certain amount. Sometimes we lie down on the tracks or throw ourselves on the grenade or other sacrificial acts in furtherance of the merit principle and the policy manual. Sometimes we are powerless to stop it, especially when there's an elected official requesting the exemption. So, in my profession, you get to see all sorts of bad stuff, and very little of it makes the local paper or the evening news, but this one sure did. Boy, did it ever. And I have to say, after 30 years of promoting competitive and open selection processes, seeing this many people care this much about one that was not posted or open or competitive is, well, it's just career redeeming, let me tell you. Based on various statements, I'm guessing that pointing out how blatantly wrong this is not going to produce any kind of epiphany or mea culpa or reversal. But while I have the mic, I'd like to break down some of the amazing subcomponents of this little personnel decision. The director of the environmental services, like other appointed department heads, reports to the county administrator. Except in Portland, department heads all over the country report to the chief administrative officer. So what if I read the paper is more or less true, we have a double end run here, getting Mr. Gray out of his position and appointing his replacement. Secondly, it seems fairly accepted that no part of Mr. Gray's job performance was below standard, only that he was attempting to resolve a performance issue laid lower in his organization that happened to adversely affect somebody who was politically well connected. Ironically, this is not the first time I've seen decisions like that, but I'm not sure I've seen those two pulled off together. That said, it might have gotten away with little notice except for actions 3 of 5, that is 3, offering the job without posting it, 4, to someone who does not meet the minimum qualifications, and 5, offering it to a political ally who happens to have a reputation for opposing environmental causes. So I guess I'm here tonight because pulling off a single personnel action with all 5 of these failings is so aggressive and so in the face of how any organization should select and manage its human resources. I found a statement on the website of a local company. Among other things, it said, the organization will only accept resumes and applications for posted positions. It said the company prizes high character. And it said the company will unceasingly search for and invite the brightest individuals to join our uncommon team of talented, highly skilled, and appreciative people.
Can you please summarize, sir?
It makes me wonder whether Senator Benton would have made the cut for a job at U.S. Digital.
Next we have Craig Dewey, Sunrise O'Mahony, Kevin Rognev, Isla Stanek, Charlie Mitchell. Craig Dewey. Craig Dewey. Craig Dewey. All right. Sunrise O'Mahony. Then Kevin Rognev, Isla Stanek, Charlie Mitchell, Peter Hodges. Ms. Mahoney, good evening.
Okay, I think the mic's really been working bad, so hopefully people can hear in the back. Boy, what to say and where to start here. So Commissioner, I'm going to start with you, Commissioner Bador. You said on April 2nd, and I quote, which is why I'm reading this, "Integrity is one of those things that I will not violate. Honesty, openness, transparency, and integrity are non-negotiable." You also said, 3 months since I have been on board here, I have been very careful to not rush full speed ahead, but to be patient and to learn and get to know the staff and build relationships and make sure we know the costs of things, the relative priority of things, and to make sure we do not invite unintended consequences. So that was said at the Parks hearing that I spoke at. I'm getting a little bit tired of continuing to speak and saying the same thing and having to say the same thing. I, like was just mentioned, have no false hope that Benton's hiring will be reversed. I have no intention that Milky is going to come out and really acknowledge what happened with Kevin Gray and the treatment with that. I don't have any false pretenses on that. However, I've come and I've heard you tell me, Medor, over and over that you, well, tonight you said you are biased, but you do listen. However, we come and we say things, we speak. You get this many people coming, you get people at the parks saying things, and yet nothing changes. It's the same thing. It's the same thing over and over. So, yet again, I am asking you about what you say versus what your actions show. You are correct that we are all getting to know you and see what you are about. And when I hear over and over comments like this where you tell us one thing, then do another, I have a hard time believing your words. You may argue that you are acting with integrity, but I would argue the opposite. When I look at the Benton hiring, I do not see honesty, openness, and integrity. If there had been complete honesty and openness, then Commissioner Stewart, and correct me if I'm wrong, would have known in advance of the board session and would not have been blindsided. When looking at the Benton hiring, I do not see openness in an appointment process that was behind closed doors and not open to others to apply. When I look at the Benton hiring, I do not see patience in taking the time to make sure it is done right so as to not invite unintended consequences. The hiring was done very fast and without a standard hiring process. I do not call this taking your time. It's embarrassing to be a citizen of Clark County right now. I have been involved in Clark County politics and nonprofits and worked for Clark County for years. And it is embarrassing. It is embarrassing to see how Kevin Gray was treated. It is embarrassing to see that you don't have the decency to do job creation and allow people to actually apply for a job. That's job creation. In my mind, it is non-negotiable, Commissioner Medor, that the actions, and Milky, that the actions of not having an open hiring process and how Kevin Gray was treated was not integrous. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next signed up wishing to testify, Kevin Rognev. And I'm sorry if you it's an R? Rogner? Okay, thank you, sir. Then Isla Stanek, Charlie Mitchell, Peter Hodges, Peter Silliman. Mr. Rogner?
Hi, my name is Kevin Rogner. I'm a lifetime resident of Clark County. I'm prepared a very different speech to present tonight, but after reviewing my words, I found it to be very critical of the county, which I chose to raise my family. I'm ashamed of the elected officials who have found it necessary to select an unqualified candidate for the Director of Environmental Services solely on the basis of who he is and not what he knows. Rescind the job offer from Don Benton and follow the established guidelines and hire a qualified person. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Isla Stanek.
I believe she has a meeting.
Okay. I'll come back around just in case, but Charlie Mitchell, Peter Hodges, Peter Silliman, Linda Wilson, Stephanie Turley. Charles Mitchell. Charlie Mitchell? Gone home. Okay. Peter Hodges, Peter Silliman, Linda Wilson, Stephanie Turley, Christian Berrigan. Peter Hodges? Is that you, sir? The floor is yours, sir.
So hungry, I'll still talk. I guess initially I'd like to express my disappointment in the way the job for Director of Environmental Services went. I heard that the job...
Sorry, sir. Folks have a real hard time. You almost got to eat that microphone. Well, and you're hungry, so, you know, that works out. I don't think it's going to taste good, but...
Well, I wanted to express my disappointment for the way the job of environmental services went. I had heard the job was going to be open, and I spent a lot of time updating my resume. I've got 45 years of experience in that field in Clark County, and I thought I'd be a good candidate for that job. Next, I waited for it to be posted, and lo and behold, it never did. I thought there was a process for the hiring in Clark County, which we had just heard from the previous gentleman, that the job wasn't posted. And if it is an appointed job, I was under the impression that it had to be a unanimous vote of all 3 commissioners to appoint somebody. That was not done. So what happened to the hiring process? I think this thing just totally smacks of political favoritism.
Don Benton is not qualified for the job, and nobody else had a chance to get it. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir.
Disappointed.
Peter Silliman, we heard from him earlier. I don't see him. Peter Silliman. Linda Wilson, Stephanie Turley, Christian Berrigan, Dick Sohn. Hold on one second.
Sorry, I thought you were.
No, sorry, I'm just reading through the list. So I've got Linda Wilson. Don? Okay. Linda Wilson, Stephanie Turley, Stephanie Lewert, Don. Christian Berrigan. Now you're right. You were right. You just, you know, you just had to get through them. All right, so we've got.
I got Steve Sturt, and then I was right.
Christian Berrigan, Dick Sohn, Steve Baird, George Vartanian. Mr. Berrigan, floor is yours.
Thank you. Again, in defense of intellectual honesty and fighting against propaganda and rhetoric, I'd like to just address a couple of things here. First of all, the accusation that Commissioner Medora or Commissioner Milkey are not representing Clark County is just ridiculous on its face. The reason I say so is, thank you, is that I voted for both of those people along with thousands of other people in this county, and we voted for them to advance a specific agenda, which they're doing a fine job doing. So thank you very much for representing your voters. I don't know what people would have you do if they would have you turn your back on all the people that voted for you so that you could be another liar that says one thing to get elected and does something different once they're in office. But thank you very much for continuing to forward the agenda that I voted you in for. I appreciate that. Now, with respect to Benton, what I found is I found a couple of objections. One seems to be an objection to Don Benton himself, and one seems to be an objection to the process. With regard to Don Benton himself, I hear a lot of he's unqualified, qualifications, etc. And from what I understand, he's got 18 years in the legislature reviewing hundreds, if not thousands, of environmental bills. I think the argument that he's unqualified for the position is also ridiculous on his face. What really is going on with the objections to Don is a difference in philosophy. Be honest about it. You don't like Don, you don't like his personality or his philosophy or something else, but guess what? Medora and Milkey were elected by people like me, and elections have consequences. So if you don't like the people that they're promoting, you know, you voice it, but let's do it honestly. You don't like Don, fine. Elections have consequences. Regarding the process, we've got issues of either the letter of the law or the spirit of the law. My understanding is the commissioners are the deciders for who gets hired to this position. That there's no law that requires them to go through HR. And I know that if I'm looking for someone to fill a job and I'm looking for someone that's going to advance the agenda of the voters that put me in office, that I trust and that I know that they've got their track record, then that's the person I'm going to want in there. And if the law doesn't say that I can bypass HR and vote for the person that I think is going to advance the agenda, then by darn it, that's what I'm going to do. Now, if I look back and say, well, what's HR going to give me? What? A list of quintuplets of the Agenda 21 or something from which I get to choose? No. I think that if it's within the law and if it's within the spirit of the law, that that's just a fine thing to do. I'm sorry if people are offended that HR is not the gatekeeper in this situation. I'm sorry if there's people that will never support Mr. Medora or Mr. Milkey that somehow think that they're obligated to agree with them instead of agree with the thousands of voters that put them in. So let's try and keep the argument on substance and keep it honest on the real issues and drop the rhetoric.
Show respect, please, folks.
Right on.
All right. Respectful disagreement, folks. Remember, respectful disagreement. All right. Folks, I got 5 different conversations going on. I need one right up front here, Mr. Sohn, and then I have Steve Baird, George Vartanian, Ed Rutledge. Sir, floor is yours.
My name is Dick Sohn, and can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to set the record straight on a few really ridiculous comments that I've heard tonight. Christian kind of took a little bit of my thunder away, but I'm going to proceed anyway. First of all, Tom Milkey was odd man out for 8 years and never flew off the handle. He handled his position with dignity, unlike some people who have lapsed recently. Mr. Medora was largely self-funded, and everybody laughed about that. The fact is, Mr. Medora is in nobody's pocket but his own. And liberal Democrats don't quite get that concept.
Folks, please.
And this kind of stuff that's going on back here, you wouldn't hear from a room full of Republicans when a liberal was up here talking. These people are disgusting. You people are disgraceful, and you've destroyed this meeting all night long.
Mr. Sum.
Well, if you don't call for order, then I'm going to call for order.
I am calling for order. I'm calling it from you as well, please.
Okay, as long as we're getting to me and you, let's talk about the fact that when we started this meeting, you told everybody to just give their name. And I thought at the time that that was for time. And then I saw you mishandling the clock of just about everybody that spoke. And we're here a lot longer than we should be because of you. Then I found out that there were a lot of Portland shills in the audience. And I figured, wow, that's why Steve didn't want anybody to know where they were from. Now, should I leap in logic and say to you, I think I'm going to file an ethics violation against you for that kind of stuff? You wouldn't like that, would you? But you made that comment before without any information. So let's get back to something that, I spent a lot more time saying that than I wanted to really talk to you about. There seems to be a few people here with concerns that David Medore and Tom Milkey erred in choosing Don Benton to be environmental director for Clark County. Our Republican commissioners are correct to do what they can to halt the long-time negative effect the establishment liberals and their cronies have had on this county. In fact, Commissioner Medore is fulfilling a campaign promise to rein in over-regulation, and I applaud him for that. Years of liberal control has created top-down anti-business bias. This has resulted in decades of operating procedures and rules and a culture that is aligned with the liberal big government attitude. I'm thankful that we have a responsible conservative majority in the county and the county board that is able and willing to reverse the process. Any environmentalist overseeing environmentalists is no oversight at all. Normal HR hiring processes are ineffective for finding and hiring key executives. The commissioners have the power, legally, to find the right people to begin the process of converting Clark County government into a small, efficient, and uncorrupted entity. A government that focuses on the health of the community and not its power. Commissioners did the right thing to seek a prominent conservative for the directorship. Senator Benton is respected by pro-growth conservatives and feared by county liberals who see their powers waning. As usual, waning breeds whining. So what?
Thank you, sir. All right. Next wishing to testify, Steve Baird, George Vartanian, Ed Rutledge, Hector Hinojosa, and Gretchen Starkey. Steve Baird, you are up first. Good evening, sir.
Hello.
Thanks for hanging with us.
My pleasure.
The floor is yours.
Well, I'm just going to go out on this note. What I just heard was, to quote someone that I have a lot of respect for, bullshit.
If we devolve into name-calling and swearing, we're not going to get anywhere other than adjourn. And I'm just saying that right now because I want to make sure everybody is heard, but we need to remain respectful of that. And as I made a mistake and apologized for that as far as swearing, I would ask you, and for any, no kids are watching at 10:45, but they'll replay this. So I don't want kids learning new words, certainly not my own. So with that, George Vartanian, Ed Rutledge, Hector Hinojosa, Gretchen Starkey. George Vartanian? George Vartanian, not here. Ed Rutledge. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Ed Rutledge, 122 West 24th Street, Vancouver. Chair Stewart, Commissioners. I'm an old guy, a government management guy. I'm former chief negotiator for the city of Portland. Former Labor Relations Director for Oregon School Boards Association. Also Human Resources Director in a couple of different districts. For me, the issue is not about the hire. It's about the rule of law. It's how we work governance in America in the 21st century. Actually, since Magna Carta. Then the old concept of rule of law is that the kings are not above the law. The law is above the kings. And here we elect our fellow citizens to serve in position, but they have to serve within the law. Now, I suppose they could change the law. This recruitment that you did, a direct appointment actually, is probably possible, but you need to change some policies. You have a human resources policies manual here in Clark County. Just perusal this afternoon, I think you violated section 1.0, section 1.1.2, section 2.3.1, section 3.0, section 3.1. As a result, I think you've also violated some state law. Oh, I forgot some sections. Section 5.0, policy statement. Section 5.0, the scope statement. Section 5.1.2, and Section 5.2.1. Now, Commissioners, you can probably change these policies or have them changed, but you didn't do that. What you did was a direct appointment in violation of your own policy. You didn't follow your own rules. And as a result, you have now exposed the county to potential litigation. And as a former human resources director, I can tell you that you have to practice defensive human resources in order to protect and preserve the interests of the people, as well as, quite frankly, the resources of the county. You put us at risk. You did that without thinking, and I ask you to reconsider what you did. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Could you please submit your written comments for the record? You're rattling off some numbers.
Notes, so they're not my real comment.
Can you email us and so that we have those numbers?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. All right, Hector Hinojosa is here. All right, Gretchen Starkey, Joy Overstreet, Vanessa Amundsen, Wayne Burnell. Sir?
Thank you again. I'd like to start by thanking Mr. Milkey in the debate earlier about to wait for a proper time. So thank you very much. In my dealings with the county and with the city as far as permit process, it's always been congenial. I've never had cause to be concerned about whether the person that I was dealing with was unconcerned about my business or about the regulations. There always seemed to be a very honest and very sincere effort on the part of the government official in doing their job or treating me with respect. I don't understand where all these derogatory comments about government come from. My personal experience has been great. They haven't been fun, mind you. It's business. And we're dealing with things within the city and the county that with people that are responsible for the health and for the protection of the environment and for the safety of the citizens of this county. So to make disparaging remarks about government from people that apparently have had bad experiences. Is it from their experience or is it just rhetoric? My experience has been straightforward. It's business. So that's the way I see it. Now, the job description about on the environmental administrator, there's 300 people that are going to be watching it very, very carefully. One screw up, and you'll see 1,000 people waiting around to make comments. So I don't know whether this hiring process was appropriate. I have my doubts. I have my reservations. But whether or not it's changed or not, I don't know. But there's 300 people present that will be watching very carefully. And if Mr. Benton does not do his job to our satisfaction, again, we will be back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Gretchen Starkey.